Welcome to Pathway Online. We're so glad you joined us today. Today we're going to talk about a man, a prison, and God doing big things.
Shout your praise and walk away and forget your name. I stand for you if that's all I do, 'cause there is none that compares to you. 'Cause all I want in this lifetime is you, and all I want in this whole world is you, you, you. Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that, tell the world that, tell the world that he died for them. Tell the world that he lives again. No longer I, but Christ in me. It's the truth that set me free. How could this world be a better place? But by thy mercy, by thy grace. 'Cause all I want in this lifetime is you, and all I want in this whole world is you, you, you. Everybody now! Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that, tell the world that, tell the world that he died for them. Tell the world that he lives again. Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that, tell the world that, tell the world that he died for them. Tell the world that he lives again. From the front to the back, let's go, come on! Come on, come on, we'll tell the world about you. 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 Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that, tell the world that, tell the world that he died for them. Tell the world that he lives again. Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that, tell the world that, tell the world that he died for them. Tell the world that he lives again. Come on, we'll tell the world about you. 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 About you.
Exploring Acts.
So let's pick up from where we left off last week. If you remember last week, the church in Antioch became to be called Christians because of their faith and because they were following Jesus. Now let's pick up where we left off from there. And we're in Acts chapter 12 today. And here's what Acts chapter 12 starts with. About that time, King Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with a sword. When Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. This took place during the Passover celebration. Then he imprisoned him, placing him under the guard of 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover. But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. Think about Peter for a second and imagine what his scenario was like. Imagine what was going on in his life. See, first of all, one of Peter's best friends, one of the guys he grew up with, one of the ones whom he had a business with for fishing for who knows how long before Jesus even came along, there you have his friend James killed. And after James was killed, Peter is brought into prison. Not only is he brought into prison, but he is surrounded by guards, 4 squads each. What that essentially meant was that Peter was guarded by 4 guards 24 hours a day, every single day. Not only was he imprisoned, not only did he have these 4 guards around him, but there were 2 guards who were actually chained to him at all times. Think about what that was like. You've seen one of your best friends die. You're thrown in prison for your faith. And now you've got these guards surrounding you and you're even chained to them. You can't go anywhere without 2 guards with you at all times. Whether you're going to sleep, going to eat, or anything else, there's 2 guards with Peter. You know what? I'm sure at this point, Peter's really thinking he doesn't know what's going to happen next. Is he going to die? What's going to happen to him? From the outside looking in, we might have an understanding, but from the inside looking out, as we look at it from Peter's perspective, Peter, I'm sure, is thinking, what in the world am I going to do? There's no rescue squad coming. Imagine not even some ninjas were coming down to rescue him, or even a special forces sliding down from a helicopter and ropes are going to bust him out of this prison. There's no way he can get out. He's trapped. He's stuck. And there's nothing he can do about it. In essence, there's no escape for Peter this time.
There'll be no escape for the princess this time.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
With God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26. One more time. With God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26. Good job.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
But with God, all things are possible. While it wasn't possible for a human, no special forces, and no one else to get Peter out, but God. Let's pick up our story. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate. Suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of the Lord stood before Peter. The angel struck him in the side to awaken him and said, "Quick, get up!" And the chains fell off his wrists. Then the angel told him, "Get dressed and put on your sandals." And he did. "Now put on your coat and follow me," the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell, following the angel, but all the time he actually thought it was a vision. He didn't realize it was actually happening. They passed the first and second guard post and came to the iron gate leading to the city, and this opened for them all by itself. So they passed through and started walking down the street, and then the angel suddenly left him. Can you imagine what that was like? Peter's laying there thinking, there's no way I'm going to get out. How in the world am I ever going to be rescued from this? But God. And God sends an angel who appears in the prison with him. And my favorite part of the whole story is he's laying there asleep and the angel needs to get his attention. So what does the angel do? It says he struck him in the side. In other words, he kicked him. He kicked Peter in the side, woke him up and said, "Get up, get dressed, and let's go." And out they walk, straight out of the prison, into the city. And when they get there, the angel disappears. Now from there, essentially what happens is Peter realizes all of a sudden he's outside the gate of the prison and he's inside the city and he's free. So what does he do? He runs to his friends' homes where they were all gathering, where all the disciples were gathering and all the followers of Jesus were gathering. And there they were praying for him. And he gets there and he knocks on the door to say, "Hey, I'm out. And he's knocking on the door, and he's knocking on the door, and he's knocking on the door, and I want to read to you exactly what happens next. In verse 12, it says, when he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many were gathered for prayer. He knocked at the door in the gate, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to open it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the door, she ran back inside and told everyone, Peter is standing at the door. You're out of your mind, they said. When she insisted, they decided it must be his angel. In other words, even they thought that he was dead. Even though they were praying for him, they thought, yeah, they killed him. This is just his angel outside the door. Meanwhile, Peter continued knocking. When they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. He motioned for them to quiet down, and he told them how the Lord had led him out of the prison. Tell James and the other brothers what happened. Now this is a different James, because the James that died is not alive at this point, right? This is probably James, the brother of Jesus, or there was another one that was called James the Lesser, but we don't know which. So there's a James. Tell James and the other brothers what happened, he said, and then he went to another place. At dawn, there's a great commotion among the soldiers about what had happened to Peter. Herod Agrippa ordered a thorough search for him. When he couldn't be found, Herod interrogated the guards and sentenced him to death. Afterward, Herod left Judea to stay in Caesarea for a while. No ninjas, no special forces, no rebels to come and rescue him. God rescues him. God brings him out of the prison, safe and sound, so he can continue with what God has called him to do. You know, this is a fantastic story about God doing big things. Because here, when no one else could help, God did a big thing. Because with man it may be impossible, but with God, all things are possible.
Wow, what an amazing thing we just learned about with Peter. How he escaped from prison. What a big thing that God did. You know what's really cool if I think about God is that he is a God who can do big things. I mean, nothing is impossible for God. So sometimes, I just like to hear stories of people that they share about what God has done big in their life. I like to remember my own life and times that God has done something big for me. So right now as a family, we would love for you to take a minute and talk about the big things that God has done in your life and the lives of people around you. Such an encouraging thing to do. So hit the pause button and take a minute and do that right now. All right, so I have a question for you. Why did God do this really big thing? Let's stop and think for just a minute. From the beginning of time, if you've been in Pathway, you've heard us talk about this, okay? From the beginning of time, God had a plan. See, when God created the world, it was perfect. And what happened when Adam and Eve came in and they made a choice to not trust in God? Do you remember? When they made that choice to sin, that perfect world was broken. But the cool thing is God wasn't like, oh no, God had a plan. And we call it the rescue plan when we talk about that in Pathway. He knew that he was going to send Jesus. Well, the disciples have seen that. They've seen Jesus come. They've seen him live his life. They've seen him die on the cross for us. And they've seen him rise again. That part of the rescue plan, it was complete. Jesus had done that. So what now? Well, if you think back to Acts chapter 1, God gave the disciples a pretty big job. Acts 1:8, think about it. You will receive power. Yeah, think about the big sign we have in our Pathway building. Power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. Why did they receive that power? Was it to run super fast from one end of the known world to the other? Was it to lift really heavy things? No, if we keep going in that verse, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses. Think about that. The disciples have been given a pretty big job themselves. They're supposed to be the witnesses that tell the world about Jesus. And things looked pretty bad. I mean, James has just been killed. And then Herod has thrown Peter in prison too, because he saw the people were excited over that. It looks pretty bad. God's people were praying, seeking him. And God said, you know what? My plan is not done. It's not fulfilled. The disciples have a pretty big mission. It's not finished. And God did something big. Herod couldn't stop God's plan. And what's really cool is even today, that mission has not been fulfilled. You and I are supposed to go and tell the world about Jesus. We are God's witnesses. So let's stop and just think about how amazing it is that God can do big things. He will help us tell others about him. God can do the impossible. Let's go out and tell the world about Jesus.
You know, as I think about it, I probably should have worn a parachute. But God does big things. So maybe I might survive this. Thank you for joining us on Pathway Online. See you next week. Woo!